The NBA season tipping off this week with NBC's return to the hardwood. And joining us right now is Rich Kleiman. He is 35 Ventures, Boardroom and Boardroom co-founder. Great to see you, sir. This is, by the way, a big deal, we should say, for NBC. And I think I don't know how you think it's going to change the game, how we watch basketball. And then, of course, you have Inside the NBA moving over to ESPN. Is that for you as a longtime fan and also, of course, agent to the one and only Mr. Durant? Do you have views?
Yeah, I actually think the construct of the NBA deal was very impressive. I was at the game live in Oklahoma City, so I wasn't able to watch the telecast of NBC, but I saw Carmelo and T-Mac and Vince Carter and Jamal Crawford before the game. I saw Mike Tirico. I think having this new crop of NBA talent, right, that is recently retired, that has a different view on how to cover the game, and then obviously the ultimate cheat code, having Michael Jordan and have him accessible to interview at halftime. I think we all saw that we really listen to Michael Jordan talk about anything. But I think that there was this need for a different type of coverage. But I think what ESPN did in being able to license back Inside the NBA, when I watched that last night, I realized what a big move that was. And I think you see three different options. There's true optionality, and there's a game every day of the week. I'd be interested to see what Amazon's able to do once the NFL ends with what they'll do on Thursday nights. But I think in general, there was a nostalgia about NBC beyond just the song, just knowing that so many of us grew up watching games, and you still get broadcast rights by having these deals with ESPN and Peacock NBC that I think benefit the league.
Rich, I don't know if you saw, there was a fascinating interview with Adam Silver recently where he effectively said that they're considering adding franchises. I think some people thought they might add franchises a little bit faster than they have. But the truth is that there's, always that worry about diluting both play and revenue. Do you have a view about that?
Well, unfortunately, I'm not an NBA owner, so I don't see the disadvantage of adding two expansion teams. But what I do think is that the conversation around NBA Europe, which I don't know if it becomes more a priority or less a priority than what we've heard is going to be two other expansion teams. I think that opportunity is the most exciting. I think the idea of potentially tapping into these existing fan bases, whether it's a Real Madrid, a PSG, a Barcelona, in these cities that love basketball. I mean, basketball, as we know, is such a global sport. And I think that what I do know is needed is new facilities in a lot of those markets, even being at the Olympics. I realize that if you had an NBA team there, you would need a true NBA arena. But those markets have such deep fan bases that I think an expansion into Europe is an incredible opportunity. But, I think the markets we've heard about, especially a market like Seattle, which I know firsthand from being in that market, is craving a team, I think would be incredible for the league.
Rich, you talked about international expansion. One of the new formats that may be put together here for the All-Star game is to pit effectively American players against international players as a way to really sort of try to make the All-Star weekend more dynamic. I'm curious about what you would do about the All-Star game itself. I think so many of us who love the NBA have watched that All-Star game and remember some of the matchups back in the late 80s, early 90s, where the players seemed to, so go at it. But now it feels that a lot of the players, don't want to get hurt on that court. And so the kind of play is fun, but a little bit more of a circus than necessarily a super competitive matchup. What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, listen, first of all, I think these things at times are a bit cyclical, and I don't think this is a permanent issue. Just like at one point we saw very highly competitive All-Star games. I think a few things have happened. First of all, as a consumer, we've all just seen all of this before now. When we were first watching these dunk contests, so much of that was brand new. And I think consumers, because of social media and their access to just so much, are desensitized a bit. But I also think that that really relates mostly to the slam dunk contest. If it was me personally, I may move the three-point contest after the dunk contest. I think that's become the marquee event of the evening. I think what fans don't understand is there's a incredible amount of work that the players are asked to do over a 4-day period of time when they get into market for an all-star game, between all the deliverables for brand deals, all the events they appear at, practice, media, that by the time you get to the game Sunday night after being at the arena all day long, and then you have a game 3 days later, you do start to be a bit more cognizant of your body. That being said, I want to see a highly competitive game, and I think you'll see that shift soon. I think players realize like enough of this chatter, like let's go hoop. And I do think you'll see that start to unfold again. But it's not as simple as them coming out on the court and phoning it in. I think people have to understand what's asked of them the entire weekend. But I also think the weekend is way better than what people give it credit for. The slam dunk contest may be something that needs to be understood a different way. It'd be great if the top players did it the way they used to. But the three-point contest and what the league did with Sabrina and Steph a few years ago, I still think it's an incredible weekend, and fans and kids still love it when they're in game and in arena.
Rich, before I let you go, we've been having lots of conversations about AI, but we've also been having conversations about social media. And we talk about kids in social media, and I was thinking about players in social media. And I was looking back at some tweets that I think you were publishing, going back and forth with LeBron James. There was a point where he was getting off of social media. This is back in 24. I'm curious whether you think it's healthy for players to be on social media ultimately.
Yeah, well, just so you know, LeBron and I weren't going back and forth. He retweeted something that I said about, just waking up one morning, watching one of the networks cover the NBA and realized, like, that's not why I fell in love with the game. How divisive the nature of the conversation was, how personal it felt. I think that there's a bit of a tipping point in that the debate kind of like era of sports coverage, for whatever reason, was front and center. Social media has exacerbated that to such a degree that I think fans really now appreciate when you can hear high-level conversation around sports. There's room for criticism, but sometimes the conversation goes beyond that. And I think what now you're starting to see with NBC's decision to have the talent that they have in studio, pregame, calling the game. I'm sure I see that Amazon's doing the same with the lineup that they ran out for this season, is that people want to listen to that conversation and people would like to hear athletes speak on a very high level. And to me, I think social media, you can't avoid that. So when we're watching on our streaming services or we're watching on our networks cover the game, like, let's raise the conversation and the tone. It's just my feeling. I think that there was space for it, but with the amount of negativity around social media, there's less and less space for it on our traditional coverage of sports.